Today we will tell you the story of the creation of the Lucchese family, as well as its path, changes in power and internal wars, right up to the present day. The Lucchese family is one of 5 families that control organized crime in New York City, USA. And it is well known for the phenomenon of the mafia or Cosa Nostra. Its illegal activities include labor market racketeering and construction, gambling, extortion, drug trafficking, money laundering, robbery, concealment of stolen goods, and contract killings. The Lucchese family formed around the beginning of the First World War as a criminal gang in the Bronx, under the leadership of Gaetan Tom Rain. In the 1920s, Raina became an ally of Joseph Masseria, the most powerful Italian-American crime leader in New York. Masseria soon found himself embroiled in the Cost Alomar War, a terrible massacre with rival socialist boss Salvatore Maranzano. Now Masseria began to demand part of Raina's criminal profits, pushing the latter to defect to Maranzano's side. However, Masseria learned of Raina's possible betrayal and conspired with Gaetano Tom Gagliano to kill Raina. On February 26, 1930, Raina was shot and killed by assassin Vito Genovese while leaving his mistress's apartment. After Raina's death, Masseria, ignoring Gagliano, put his Fat Joe, Joseph Pinzalo at the head of Raina's gang. Beside themselves from such a betrayal, Gagliano and Gaetan Tom Lucchese went over to Maranzano. In September 1930, Lucchese tricked Pino Sola into an office building in Brooklyn, where he was killed. With the murder of Masseria in early 1931, Maranzano took control of the New York gangs and reorganized them into 5 crime families. Gagliano became the boss of the Raina gang, which later became known as the Lucchese family, with Lucchese as his second in command. After Maranzano was eliminated in September 1931, Lucky Luciano became the head boss of New York. However, Luciano retained the 5 families as they were created by Maranzano. In subsequent years, Gagliano and Lucchese introduced their family to the lucrative shipping and clothing industries. When Gagliano died in 1953, Lucchese, who had remained loyal to his boss from beginning to end, became boss and appointed Vincent Three-Fingered Rao as his deputy. He continued the traditions established by Gagliano, making the family that today bears his name the most profitable in New York. Lucchese continued to expand the family's interests by controlling the Teamsters and Warehouse Workers Union, and various trade associations, and developing rackets at the airport. He also developed close relationships with politicians and members of the judiciary, who often assisted the family. For all this, and also for the fact that he kept a low profile, he was praised in mafia circles. Lucchese spent 44 years in the mafia without ever being convicted. Towards the end of his life, Lucchese suffered from numerous health problems and his heart stopped on July 13, 1967. The man who became the head of the family was Carmine Tremonti. By that time, Tremonti himself was almost 70 years old and suffering from illnesses, but while the appointed boss, Anthony Duck Corral, was in prison, Tremonti was elected interim boss. As the boss, Tremonti faced a number of charges and was eventually convicted of financing a major smuggling deal. This led to the arrests of Vincent Papa and Antonio the Elder in the notorious French Channel case. The crime scheme saw millions of dollars worth of powder distributed throughout the East Coast in the early 1970s, which in turn led to the corruption of the New York City Police Department. The scope and depth of this operation is still not fully known, but officials suspect that police officers providing access to the vault were involved in it, where hundreds of kilograms of confiscated goods were stored, and powder was replaced with flour. The substitution was only discovered when officers discovered insects eating the contents of the bags. By this time, the goods had already disappeared with a street value of about $70 million. This scam was discovered and arrests followed. Some of the conspirators received prison sentences, including Vincent Papa. He was later killed at the federal penitentiary in Atlanta. After his conviction in 1974, Carmine Tremonti was led by strong Queens gang boss Anthony Corella, nicknamed Dax, for his reputation for dodging various charges. He was active in unions and worked closely with Jimmy Hova, president of the Teamsters and Warehouse Workers Union, in the 40s and 50s. Corolla, who had close ties to the Painters and Decorators Union, as well as the Plumbers Union and the Textile Workers Union, appointed Salvatore Tom Mixanthora as his deputy and overseer of all labor and construction rackets. And Christopher baptized Furnari as his advisor. The family flourished under Corolla's leadership, being active in various fields. Since Corolla never discussed matters at meetings, fearing police wiretapping, he discussed them in the Jaguar of his driver and bodyguard, in which a telephone was installed. Corolla, who helped the New Jersey group, adopted and promoted Anthony Tumac Kichura and Michael Mad Dog Takeda, putting them in charge of the New Jersey group, which, according to available data, controlled most of the loan sharking and gambling operations in Newark at the time. But while Corolla maintained a strong leadership of the Lucchese family, the FBI managed to plant a bug in Corolla's car in the early 1980s. Running the business by phone from his car, he spent hours talking about the gang's affairs, everything from gambling and labor racketeering to drug dealing and murder. Corolla was arrested and put on trial along with the heads of 5 families from that time. This process became known as commission cases. He was convicted on numerous charges and sent to prison, where he spent the rest of his life, dying in 2000. Following the disappearance of acting boss Anthony Batty Lungo, Corolla's next choice was Vittorio Vicamuzov. In the late 1980s, the Lucchese family was going through a period of disarray. In 1986, Vittorio Vicamuzov and his tough deputy Anthony Gaspipe Casso seized control of Luisa's family and established a regime of power. They were both heavily involved in labor racketeering and extortion and committed numerous murders. Amuzov and Casso were strong enemies of Gambino family boss John Gotti, and the loyal allies of the boss of the Genovese family, Vincent Giganti, dissatisfied with the unsanctioned murder of the boss of the Gambino family, Paul Kostlanov, Ludmig Gotti, Amuzio Casso, and Giganu planned to kill Gotti. On April 13, 1986, a car bomb killed Gambino family underboss Frank DoChico. However, Gotti escaped death. This assassination attempt unleashed a long and unclear confrontation between 3 mafia families, with many deaths on both sides. In the late 80s, Amuzio began demanding 50% of the Jersey Group's profits. New Jersey leaders Anthony Tumaca Kichura and Michael Mad Dog Takeda refused Amuzio's demands. In payment, Amuzio ordered his guys to kill Jersey, meaning the destruction of the entire group in Jersey. And they were called to a meeting in Brooklyn in New York. Fearing for their lives, none of the gangsters came to the meeting. Takeda and Akdura were convicted in 1990. While Amuzio and Kaju were embroiled in a window price gouging case, they both had to go into hiding. Managing the family from afar and ordering the murders of anyone who caused problems as well as enemies and potential informants, Joseph Littlejohn Fata was elected acting boss of the Lucchese family. Despite the fact that Muse continued to rule from behind bars in the mid-90s, Fata, who ran the sewing portal, allegedly earned between $40,000 and $60,000 a month. And when Steven Wunderkind took up racketeering in the labor market and construction, the Lucchese family earned from $300,000 to $500,000 a year. But continuing to put pressure on organized crime, law enforcement forces arrested Fed in 1998 and charged him with 9 counts, to which he pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Angry at Fade's admission of guilt, Amuse began to doubt Fade's loyalty and appointed Cray as the new acting boss of the Lucchese family. Crea, an influential gang boss from the Bronx, significantly increased the family's profits, which convinced Tamuz that Fata was hiding part of the profits, and Muse decided to order him in 1999. But on September 6, 2000, Crea and 7 other family members were arrested and jailed on extortion charges. Crea was convicted in 2001 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Afterwards, a hardline Queens councilman, Louis Diaton, a prominent member of the family in the 1980s, seized control of the family in 2001 after Kriya's conviction. However, with the release of Fed, whom Muse had previously ordered, Deakins went to prison with the help of Fed, who testified and was convicted on charges of murder and criminal conspiracy. Also in September 2004, Alphonse Marcoux testified in this case. In April 2006, it was discovered that Anthony Cosa had two respected New York City detectives working for him as hitmen for informants, who worked on the side in the 1980s and early 1990s until they retired. It turned out that the corrupt cops are Loso Spazita and Stephen Caracopa. During their 44 years of service together, they committed murder and provided confidential information within the Lucchese family. From 1986 to 1990, they were involved in 8 murders, and over the course of 6 years, they received about $375,000 from Ka for the murders they committed. It has been proven that Casa used Caracas and Opposite to eliminate members of the Gambino family in order to put pressure on the family. Since Casa, along with the imprisoned Vittorio Vicamusa and Vincent Cingiganta, wanted to get John Gotti out of their way. To date, it is the active presence of Caracalla and Opposite that is considered the most important explanation for why the conflict between the three families in the late 80s and early 90s lasted so long. Among their victims was James Hydell, whom they stuck in the trunk and brought to Casa for torture. His body was never found. They also shot Ibranov Gastello, who was found in the trunk of a car in Brooklyn with a canary in his mouth, the mark of an informant. Stopping for a routine ID check, Gambino family capo Edward Eddie Lynn was shot and killed in his Mercedes. In 2006, Esposito and Caracopa were convicted of murder. James Hydella, Nicholas Agido, John Otto Hydell, John Doe, Anthony Delapi, Bruno Vastiello, Edward Alina, and Bartolomeo Berry Law on the orders of Kesu and the Lucchese family. That same year they were sentenced to life imprisonment. Vittorio Vicamuso, as of 2012, remains the official boss of the Lucchese family. Despite his life sentence, it is not clear what impact he has on his family from within the prison walls.